National Service Training Program. Learning Outcomes. At the end of this chapter, the student should be able to 1. Explain the history and significance of the Nstp in the purview of national security and development. 2. Appreciate the value of Nstp as a citizenship training program. And the last, number 3, support Nstp related activities and endeavors. Under the Nstp program, both male and female college students of any baccalaureate degree, course or technical vocational course in the public or private educational institutions are obliged to undergo one of the three program components for an academic period of 2 semesters. The students, however, are free to choose which particular program components to take. This law was signed by the former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo on July 23, 2002. This law was signed in response to the public interest to reform ROTC. The program components of NSTP. We have three components of the NSTP. The first is the Reserve Officers Training Corps, or the ROTC. Second, Literacy Training Service, or the LTS. Third, the Civic Welfare Training Service, or the CWTS. First, let's talk about ROTC, or Reserve Officers Training Corps, which aim to provide military education and training for the students to mobilize them for national defense preparedness. It has specific objectives. What are those? One is to include preparations of college students for service in the armed forces of the Philippines of the event of an emergency, and two, to become reservists and potential commissioned officer of the AFP. This program component is designed to teach literacy and numeracy skills to school children, out of school youth, particularly in underprivileged children in the community and far from places. The hope of this program is to continue learning on a peer-to-clear interaction to teach them how to write, to think, to read, and to become competent to the chosen field. And lastly, the third, CWTS. This program component is designed to provide students with the activities contributory to the general welfare and betterment of life of the members of the community, especially those devoted in improving health, education, environment, safety, and entrepreneurship in order to improve the social welfare services. The example of these programs are to provide seminar and workshop on livelihood skills, health education, advocacy in private actions, and business sectors. We have five legal bases of National Service Training Program. First, the Philippine Constitution. The second, Commonwealth Act Number 1, also known as National Defense Act. Third, Presidential Decree Number 1706, also known as National Service Law. Fourth, Republic Act Number 7077, also known as the Citizen Armed Forces of the Philippine Reservist Law. And the last, the fifth, Republic Act Number 9163, also known as NSTP Act 2001. In keeping with the concept of national service, the 1987 Philippine Constitution enshrined in its declarations of principles that the Filipinos are duty-bound to protect the country, and as such, they may be subjected to undergo service programs. This requirement is premised on the constitutional provisions, which provide that The prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. The government may call upon the people to defend the state, and in fulfillment thereof, all citizens may be required, under conditions provided by law, to render personal, military, or civil service that is stated in Article 2, Section 4 of the Philippine Constitution. Along this line of thought, the same Constitution, under its state policies, prescribe the involvement of the young generations in the community affairs in order to secure the nations. Article 2, Section 13 is clear to it. The state recognizes the vital role of the youth in nation building and shall promote and protect their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social well-being. It shall inculcate in the youth patriotism and nationalism and encourage their involvement in public and civic affairs. The imposition of the National Program for Service and Training of the Youth in the Philippines began with the creation of Commonwealth Act No. 1, otherwise known as the National Defense Act. It is a legislative act providing basis for the national defense of the country, punishing certain violations thereof, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes under the government of President Manuel L. Quezon in 1935. The same law that required college students, particularly males, to finish 2 years, equivalent to 4 semesters, of military training as a modality to institutionalize the reservist system in the Philippines national defense. In 1980, the National Defense Act was amended to give existence to Presidential Decree No. 1706, otherwise known as the National Service Law. It mandated compulsory national service to all Filipino citizens. It was composed of three main program components, namely Civic Welfare Service or the CWS, Law Enforcement Service or the LES, and the last, Military Service or the MS. College students were given an option to choose one from among these components in compliance with this requirement for tertiary education. The implementation of National Service Law, except the provision of the military service, was suspended by Presidential Memorandum Order No. 1 under the incumbency of former President Corazon Aquino, paving the way for the conceptualization of the Basic Reserve Officers Training Corps or the ROTC, embodied under Republic Act Numbers 7077, the Citizen Armed Forces of the Philippines Reservist Law, effective school year 1986 to 1987. The ROTC program aimed to realize the constitutional mandate of developing a strong civilian base to supplement the professional military in the nation's defense system. It was designed to initiate the ROTC trainees in the rudiments of soldiership, instilling in them discipline and correct deportment. The objective of the said program was to train all able-bodied tertiary students for military skills in case of war. It cannot be disputed, however, that the law on mandatory military training for male Filipino students that existed for more than 60 years was tainted with anomalies and irregularities in the advent of the post-Marcos era that culminated to the unprecedented death of UST ROTC cadet officer Mark Wilson Chua for alleged anomalies of erring ROTC officials in 2001. thus defeating the purpose upon which this military training program was anchored in, as a way to offer an alternative in neutralizing people aversion to this military program. During the school year 2001 to 2002, ROTC was only made optional under the National Service Training Program or the NSP, conceiving the so-called expanded ROTC or the EROTC, characterized by deviation from the rigid tactical training, offering alternatives like rendering civil auxiliary sources in the form of helping maintain law and order, assisting socio-economic development projects, and delivery of basic health services or aiding in addressing local insurgency. In view of this option, it gave the students the choice among the following components: military service or the MS, civic welfare service or the CWS, and law enforcement service or the LES. In December 2001, the Nstp Act, envisioned to address public clamor for reforms in the ROTC and NSP programs, was signed into law by the former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo as an aggressive modality towards making the former national service training that is military in nature relevant to the changing needs of the time. The main objective of the NSTP is to stress the significant role played by youth, male and female alike, in the task of devoting our nations by a national service training. As such, it aims to develop the youth to become civic or military leaders and volunteers through a modified, restructured, and reinforced training package whom could be called upon by the nation in cases their service are needed and in the event of disaster or emergencies. And that's the end of the chapter. Thank you for watching. God bless and keep safe, everyone.